Hello everyone, welcome to every episode of the Epic Tales of Captain Underpants Season 1 Reviewed. So basically, this is like every episode of reviewed thing. If you saw that, you know there are 3 ratings. The good one, the mediocre one, and the bad one. Well, we also have those, except it'll be in great tale, mediocre tale, or terrible tale. Without further ado, let's begin with Episode 1, The Frenzy Farts of Flabby Flabulous. Fun fact, this is the first episode of the series. And for it does a pretty good job. It introduces the main characters such as George, Harold, Mr. Krupp, and of course Captain Underpants. Those are the obvious ones. It also introduced other characters like Melvin, Erica, though I don't think her name's addressed. Jessica, I think Dressy, but her name is also not addressed, and she doesn't voice anything. She's just a random student in the seat. So yeah. Anyways, I like the fight with the villain. Though I do think it's a little bit reliant on the poop and fart gags or toilet gags, which I'm not a big fan of. It is still a great episode, a good episode, and a great tale. Moving right along to episode 2, The Dreadful Debacle of DJ Drowsy Drawers. I definitely spelled drawers wrong there. Fun fact, the school is toxic waste. See, yeah, as Mrs. Hurd is about to get crushed by 2 cars, one of them is carrying toxic waste, and the narrator says, aka the school food. And what strikes me as weird is that Mr. Krupp, in the beginning of this episode, of the same episode, this one, he says that there's zesty meat tacos, which sounds gross, and milk. So that got me really confused. But anyways, besides that, there's also a few minor faults here and there, but it doesn't affect its rating as it is a great tale. I like the DJ auditions were really good. The werewolf and the vomit thing, though it's kind of gross, it kind of got a laugh out of me. And I like the little fight with the villain of DJ Drowsy Drawers itself. I think it's really good. I only have a flaw. It's that Captain Underpants does the dab twice, and if I know something, I don't like anyone doing the dab like ever. It's just wrong and very cringe in my opinion. But besides that, we're gonna move on to episode 3, The Horrible Hostilities of the Homework Hydra. Fun fact, it says here homework was made in ancient Egypt, but it was actually made in Venice in 1905. Anyways, the beginning of this episode, so it seems like it's going to be a great tale again. But once you get to like the halfway point and once they like removed homework, it kind of gets boring, and I kind of zoned off from the episode for a bit until the fight with the villain, and even so after that I zoned off again. But just because half of the episode is like so boring and very uneventful. Like there's a scene where they're doing sandboarding on sand dunes and showing how cool Melvin is now. And at the end, they have to go back to the status quo of Melvin's a nerd and dumb. So when they bring back homework, Melvin immediately turns back into a nerdy idiot. Well, not really an idiot. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the series. But, his nerdy self making that entire sand scene saying that Melvin has changed completely false. That, added with a bunch of other problems, zones this episode down to a mediocre tale, in my opinion. Let's just move on to episode 4, The Vexing Villainy of the Vile Vampire. Fun fact, I think Mr. Krupp started going bald in his teens, because Captain Underpants said that, So I think it's kind of like Mr. Krupp doing that. Anyways, before I rewatched this episode, since I've already watched season 1 once I thought this was going to be one of my top favorites and an automatic great tale. But when I rewatched it, it's still a great tale, don't get me wrong, but it's not as good as I remembered. It introduced Erica, and it also introduced Jessica and the Sophies, and how Jessica acts like a jerk to them. And honestly, that's the only reason why I really hate Jessica as a character. That's the only real flaw she has, especially once we get to season 3. It also introduces Erica as a main character. Well, she used to be a side character in the first time, the 2 seasons, but she kind of turned into a mainstream character, appearing in every episode after season 3. But we'll get to that later. Let's just talk about the core episode. Yeah, it's pretty eventful, it's pretty good, but not as good as I remembered. Definitely not going to be in any top 5s anytime soon. But let's just move on to episode 5, the terrifying, perilous misfortune of the TP mummy. Oh boy, this episode. So, fun fact, Mr. Ree is French-Canadian, which I strikes out as interesting because every time I see him, he sounds really American for some reason. Anyways, I love this episode, and it is definitely a great tale. So, of everything from the beginning when Miss Yu is introduced to the very end where that big boss fight happens the big fight happens at Turds, it's really cool. And definitely one of my favorite episodes of not just this season, but the entire series as a whole. It is like one of my personal stand-up episodes in this series. Well, so far, honestly. Well, let's just move right along to episode 6, the squishy predicament of Stanley Pete's Stinky Pits. Fun fact, Mr. Krupp has a sister. You might miss it, but Miss Anthrop does say that Mr. Krupp has a sister. Anyways, but that's only the really interesting part I saw. The rest of it is so boring. It begins with George and Harold looking at this avocado growing contest, the most boring, which it says is the most boring event ever, except for the prize where you get infinite food. So we gotta get ready for like almost 10 minutes of useless montages of George and Harold trying to grow an avocado seed into an avocado tree. And also, Mr. Krupp has this weird relationship with guacamole for some reason, and it's really weird. But it appears later in other seasons too. So I don't that. But there's also other big flaws. This is the first episode where Melvin wants to go to Elite Academy, and it's really where Melvin gets his separates his character from the books because this series is based on a book series called Captain Underpants. I honestly have no idea how you have not heard of it yet, and if you're watching and forget about it. But anyways, getting back on track. Jack Melvin really want to go into it, and somehow you must get number 1 in a giant avocado growing contest, very randomly. I really only think that this was just for the progressing of the plot, honestly. And there's so much more I have to say, but I'll say one more thing. There's this scene where Mr. Krupp eats rotten guacamole, which looks very gross, and then he just pukes. And it's so disgusting. It literally made me gag. I really hate this episode, and it is going to be our first terrible tale. It is an awful episode, and I really don't recommend it to any newcomers. But let's not forget about that and move on to episode 7, the costly conundrum of the calamitous Colossus. Fun fact, Chupacabra is real in the Captain Underpants universe. Why I put that there is because it's going to be very important once we get into season 2. But we're not in season 2 yet. So let's just talk about this episode. And I'm happy to say that it is a great improvement over the last episode, because there's a lot of great jokes in this, especially the crow. One of my favorite lines is what he says down there, and what I put for my quote. Anyways, this is a great tale and a really good episode in my opinion. Episode 8, The Jarring Jerkiness of Judge Jorts. Fun fact, the characters can hear the narrator. I thought it was a small gag in the end of the last episode, but no, they hear him again when they're trying to comfort Jerry Citizen. Which, let's talk about Jerry Citizen for 1 second. I really don't like Jerry Citizen. He is so unlikable, and not very good for this as an only appearance. He's a very big crybaby for some reason, and how he says "why" is so unbearable, and there's also other problems with the plot. Like it feels way different than any other season 1 episode. In fact, I thought this episode was in season 2 once. And it also has a clip, and my least favorite part of the episode, well, besides Jerry Citizen's parts, is that they put a cliffhanger that doesn't even continue on to the next episode. And they clearly know how to do that since they're gonna do that in some later episodes. So it's coming up in this season. Anyways, because of those big reasons, I have to give this a mediocre tale. Episode 9, The Strange Strife of the Smelly Soctopus. Fun fact, Mr. Krabs has a lot of tiny Mr. Krabs in his brain. They all form like this little jury council thing, and I think it's just okay-ish. Anyways, this has a very similar problem to that of the Homework Hydra, and that it seems like it's going to be a great tale in the beginning, but then it just falls apart at the end. I really think it falls apart when after mess up Mr. Krup's office. I really think that's where the episode goes down. And also I don't know if it's just me, but I think the Soctopus sounds really weird. He always says stinking like he's from he's from Detroit, and it's really weird. And because of the falling of the plot, and also as a not very good ending, I'm also gonna give this a mediocre tale. Wow, 2 mediocre tales in a row. Not a very good sign for this season, if you ask me. Let's just hope the next episode's better. We move on to episode 10, The Flustering Mindless Woe of the Flushable Memory Wipes. Fun fact, Mr. Krabs, I forgot to change that fact. But that fact is supposed to say that that last episode is a Taco Tuesday, but this episode is a Chili Wednesday. So I think this episode comes from the day after the Soctopus episode. So I was just too lazy to change that fun fact. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, when I was going to rewatch this episode, this was one of my least remembered episodes. I literally forgot everything of what happened here. But after I watched this episode, I really love it. It is indeed a great tale. I like the book of cliches joke, and I also like the story how Theodore Murdley became Ted Turdsley. And it's also one of the few comics that I kind of like, The Origin of Captain Underpants, which also, another fun fact, if you look closer into the comic, it looks like the same comic you see from the very first book of Captain Underpants. Maybe I should put that as my fun fact, but I'm too lazy. So anyways, this episode is really great because you can do because they put the other characters losing their memory trope to a really good point, and I really think they used it to its full potential. Though I think they could have used a little bit more, I'm still happy with how much they used here. Moving right along to episode 11, the soggy salvation of the swirling sweat Nami. Fun fact, Mr. Krupp could have become a ruthless business person. Seriously, if Krupp could have won his disco competition, he would have destroyed child labor laws and turned the failing school into literally a kid slave workshop. I am not kidding. Just watch the episode for yourself. But anyways, even though they still managed to get good gags out of it, Erica here in this episode definitely gets the spotlight here. She's like a kind of master of all the kids, and always trying to tell everyone to get to work. Kirk when Mr. Krabs comes up. Not Mr. Krabs, Mr. Krupp. Krupp. Now that I think of it, those names sound really similar. Could be trying to tell us something, but I'm getting sidetracked. This is a great tale and a really good episode. Now let's move on to episode 12, the sickening fumes of Smarty Farty. Fun fact, this episode, along with the next one, works as a two-parter series. I didn't put series here because I thought it wouldn't work right. Anyways, these two episodes are actually the last episodes of season 1 because if you don't know already, all of these seasons have 13 or less episodes. So this is going to be much more quicker than the SpongeBob one. But anyways, this has a bigger problem. This is kind of like the first episode, the Frenzy Farts of Flabby Fabulous, where it's really dependent on fart jokes, which I also said I didn't really like. So these are my least favorite parts. It makes that up for the great storytelling, and also a kind of good continue on to the next episode, as like I said, this and the next one works as a two-parter to finish off season 1, and also kind of brings lore to the series, like how Melvin really wants to head into Elite and Naughty Academy, which I explained back in Stanley Stinky Pits, but now he's banned from going there forever because Jordan Harold made Smarty Farty and all the Illuminati people there got really, I don't know actually, honestly. Well, all I know is that this episode is a great tale. And now we move along to the final episode of the season, episode 13, The Troublesome Treachery of the Deceiving Tooth Fairy. Fun fact, George has Mr. Cup's phone number. Seriously, that's when he calls as Pizza Pete saying, "His boat is on fire," which is very cool. Anyways, the favorite part, it definitely has one of the best endings in the entire series. It's a really good cliffhanger that goes on to the next season because this is the last episode. And I'm happy to say that this is also a great tale. So if I have a one flaw, it's the title. That is really misleading. Because the Tooth Fairy is Smartsy Fartsy, and even so, he's really he really works as a side plot, not a main plot. So I really don't agree with that title. But besides that, we have reviewed every single episode of of the Epic Tales of Captain Underpants reviewed. Some statistics. So as you can see here, we have 9 great tales, 3 mediocre tales, and 1 terrible tale. Now, if it was any other season, yeah, this would be really good ratings. But in season 1 standards, I really expected more. Don't get me wrong, this is still some pretty good statistics right here. As the great tales still outnumber every other type, the mediocre and terrible tales here. But what I was honestly expecting, no terrible tales, and at least only 2 or 1 mediocre tales. So I was a bit disappointed with these ratings, if I have to be honest. But anyways, let's get into the rating of the season as a whole. So, according to the statistics and my personal opinion, I have to say, even though it looks kind of bad, I will still, since the great tales still outnumber everything, I guess I can call it a great season. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. I'm planning for my next episode to be playing Roblox, so you can kind of see that in the coming days, maybe weeks, because of editing purposes. My crappy editing purposes, because I'm bad at editing. Anyways, that's all for this episode. Please like and please subscribe, because I am going to make more episodes. And if you're wondering where SpongeBob season 2, I might work on that, though it's going to be a bit, since I really prefer watching them than just putting them on a slideshow, honestly. And I am, if I had it with me, because it's just too much work for me. So I think this is just much better, because 1, there's much less episodes, and 2, I don't think there really is a 2, honestly. But yeah, that's it. Like, subscribe, usual stuff. Bye.